أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ وَيَقْبِضْنَ مَا يُمْسِكُهُنَّ إِلَّا الرَّحْمَنُ إِنَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ بَصِيرٌ أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ يَنْصُرُكُمْ مِنْ دُونِ الرَّحْمَنِ إِنِ الْكَافِرُونَ إِلَّا فِي غُرُورٍ أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرْزُقُكُمْ إِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقَهُ بَلْ لَجُّوا فِي عُتُوٍّ وَنُفُورٍ أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ أَهْدَى أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِيًّا عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ صدق الله العظيم. Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal has mentioned in Surah Mulk in the beginning His kingdom in the heavens and in the earth. How? Amongst other things, Allah has mentioned the creations of the skies, one above the other, the heavens above our heads, the stars within those heavens. And in the more recent ayats that we were discussing, Allah has mentioned the possibility of punishment through being sucked into the earth, and stones, hasiba, raining from the heavens. And Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned the ni'mah of the earth itself. He's the one who هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا. He made it subservient to you. So in this, Allah is mentioning His domain, His mulk, Surah Mulk, the domain of the heavens and the domain of the earth. And here in this verse, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions His domain and His majesty and His control, His grasp, His qudra and its manifestation in the space between the heavens and the earth. So Allah Azza wa Jal is mentioning the things we can see. We can see the skies, we can see the stars. We're being asked to look at them again and again. Karratayni, karra ba'da karra, once and again and again. Thumma arji' al-basara karratayni. And we're being told to look around and learn. And now Allah Azza wa Jal, after having mentioned the ni'mah of the earth, dhalulan, subservient, which we can use and walk upon, the mountains, the valleys, the ravines, the paths that Allah created, the walkways that all humans use across deserts and jungles. Allah Azza wa Jal, after having mentioned the possibility of punishment as well if we disobey Him, the earth beneath our feet and the sky above our head can be the source of that punishment. Allah Azza wa Jal now talks about something else, a phenomena which are there to inspire. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ. Do they not look? أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا, have they not looked? فَوْقَهُمْ, above them. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ, have they not looked to the birds? فَوْقَهُمْ, above them. صَافَّاتٍ. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ. Their wings spread out by them. وَيَقْبِضْنَ, and periodically they wrap them, they close them in. مَا يُمْسِكُهُنَّ إِلَّا الرَّحْمَنُ, none holds them up besides the Merciful One. مَا يُمْسِكُهُنَّ إِلَّا الرَّحْمَنُ إِنَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ بَصِيرٍ. Indeed, He is looking, everything is in His sight. Everything is in His sight. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ. So again, the ru'ya here, أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا, have they not looked to the birds above them? Do we look at the birds around us and be inspired by them? The variety of birds, the small ones and the large ones, the different colors, the sparrows and the robins and the pigeons and the gulls, the seagulls, the magpies, the whole variety that we have here. And in Scotland, the eagles and the owls. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ. طَيْر is plural of طَائِر, bird, flying creature. فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ. Now this is an adjective for the طَيْر, the birds. طَيْر means birds, it's a plural. صَافَّات. And صَافَّات means here, the Mufassirin say, their wings spread out. This is a noun. And then after this, وَيَقْبِضْنَا, this is a verb, and it's the mudari, and they close their wings. So the norm is صَافَّات, and the periodic change is the verb يَقْبِضْنَا. So birds keep their wings outstretched, and from time to time, وَيَقْبِضْنَا, they close them. The Mufassirin, again with their amazing insight, they take inspiration from this. This is why so many of the scholars of Islam historically were able to develop so many technologies. Imam Nasafi, Madarikut Tanzil, in Tafseer Nasafi, he passed away in the early part of the 7th century Hijri. He talks about how this tells us about the principles of flight. That this lift is achieved by keeping the wings open. And it is only to reassert this lift, to achieve it again, when it's being lost, are the wings moved from time to time. And we see this. I mean, gulls, for example, are known to swim for miles, to sail, shall we say, to fly for miles and miles across the oceans, and they barely flap their wings. So this movement, saffat, this is the noun, this is the permanent condition of the flying creature. And وَيَقْبِضْنَا, from time to time birds close their wings in and then extend them out again and keep them in that position, and then they close them and extend them out again, and this pattern. So when Allah Azza wa Jal asks us to look at something, then that's a source of huge knowledge. Now we have branches upon branches of engineering, aerodynamics, aeronautical engineering, this whole science of how lift and buoyancy is established. And the Mufassirin mentioned, they say that swimming and flying are very similar. And just as a person swims in water, birds fly in the heavens. And it's true from a scientific point of view as well. This is absolutely accurate. It's exactly the reality of the situation. Buoyancy in water and lift in air is established by displacing the water or the air. And this is a subject within itself. So the Qur'an invites us to explore this. And this is why we say that whichever branch of knowledge, whichever career path you pursue, you should seek Allah's ma'rifah through it, by reading into His science and being amazed at the way He created everything. The hollow bones and skeletal structure of these birds, their wings, and how this is mimicked today by modern aircraft. And absolutely it is. You will see, in fact I remember seeing illustrations in a book in which page after page there were images of birds with their wings outspread, literally, like the outline of the bird. And next to it, an aircraft. And how this aircraft is similar to this bird in its wingspan and in its proportion, and again in its movement in the air as well. Some birds move rapidly and dart, and some glide for long distances. Some take off and land rapidly and dive. And so, for example, when an eagle, when it pursues the hunt, the speed at which it hits it, and it approaches it, and this whole science is fascinating as well. Scientists have used tiny cameras on the heads of hunting birds, and they've been able to film these birds in movement, fast and slow, whether it's an eagle in the sky or it's an owl in the woods, and how they're moving between the trees and how they're approaching the hunt, and they sort of zone in. Eagles, the sharpness of their sight, and the span of it as well, and how when they're moving direction in the sky, the whole earth revolves in the opposite direction relative to them. So this whole science. And then think about this: when a bird is hunting another creature, a bird or a smaller bird or a creature on the ground, and this other creature is in movement, when it's approaching something in movement, nowadays modern aircraft lock on to their target, don't they? Youngsters are aware of this because they play too many computer games. Yeah. So basically, the bird is locking on, and then the science of this, as you move towards a moving target, to keep locked onto that target for a bird in movement, subhanAllah, as it's adjusting its movement, and it hits it dead on. The trajectory of the moving target and the bird that's pursuing it. This is a fascinating whole dimension within itself. And the Qur'an is inviting us to explore this and see Allah through it. The birds and how they fly. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ وَيَقْبِضْنَ مَا يُمْسِكُهُنَّ إِلَّا الرَّحْمَنُ. None holds them up except the Merciful One. Meaning, you can study buoyancy and lift. You can study aeronautical engineering as much as you will. And it was a long time before human beings eventually succeeded in achieving flight after trying for generations and generations. The whole story of eventually how human beings became airborne. This whole subject. But before we this subject aside, this whole aspect aside, the ability to fly, or for that matter, as is mentioned in other parts in the Qur'an, in Surah Yasin for example, when Allah mentions His signs, Allah mentions وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. And it is from His signs for them that it is a sign for them that we carried them in the laden ship. فِي الْفُلْكِ الْمَشْحُونِ. Subhanallah, the laden ship. Can you relate to this? The cargo, probably the clothes you were wearing were imported, probably on a ship as cargo. Probably a portion of the food you eat today will have been transported by sea. Probably the phone in your pocket came by sea as well. Probably the glasses that you're wearing, if you're wearing glasses. And the list goes on. The shoes that you have, your car probably came from, if it came from abroad, not probably, it came by ship. It didn't come on an airplane. So this has never changed. These huge wooden or nowadays metal sea vessels which carry cargo across the oceans, when the Suez Canal became blocked some time ago, some days ago, you saw the consequences on the whole world's economy, the ripple effect. The fuel in your car, oil, comes by sea. Al-Fulk al-Mashhoon. This is from the signs of Allah, mentioned as a ni'mah in Surah Al-Rahman as well, mentioned in other places, mentioned in Surah Baqarah, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and there, وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ, the ships which travel at sea, carrying that which benefits people. And here, in Surah Yasin, وَآيَةٌ لَهُمْ أَنَّا حَمَلْنَا ذُرِّيَّتَهُم, we carried their progeny on the laden vessel. وآية لهم أنا خلقناهم أنا حملناهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثل ما يركبون. And we created for them the likes thereof which they ride. Now this is kept open. And ships, Allah is attributing their creation to Himself. So ulama, contemporary ulama have sometimes said that you can include in the second verse aircraft, because min mithlihi ma yarkabun, something which human beings use and ride, because ultimately creation is from Allah. He created the materials we use, the wood and the metal and the plastics, they come from His creation. And the intellect which we use, and it's because of His enabling us that we're able to do these things. So really, just like you farm, you plant the seeds, He causes the seeds to germinate. So here, just like the Titanic and subsequently many other vessels, recent submarine which was unfortunately lost to that country, if you've been following, the fact that these vessels, which are considered when they're designed, manufactured and built and constructed with pride and passion, the idea is that this ship will not sink, it will not capsize. This aircraft, the recent problem with the aircraft automated system that had to be repaired by the big company, which one was it now? The Boeing, yes? And so the idea was, it was meant to be a safety system, but a couple of aircraft were lost because of a flaw in the design. So this is the apparent, the zahir. It's like you say, a patient died because he had this disease. But these are asbab. Ultimately, ships and planes and people only survive and exist and subsist because Allah Azza wa Jal chooses to do so. And Allah is telling us that in this verse. Don't think that the birds flap their wings and therefore they fly. If you're a mu'min and you believe in the Creator, and you should by His signs, these birds are not their own creators. And evolution answers no questions. By the way, it's a simple point. It just takes you back on a wild goose chase. What was the goose before it was the goose? But where did it start? Big Bang? That doesn't take you anywhere either. What was before the Big Bang? These are not solutions to these questions. Allah Azza wa Jal, Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. Allah is the creator of everything. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Kaf, which you will have recited today, ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض. I didn't make them a witness to the creation of the heavens and the earth. ولا خلق أنفسهم, not upon their own creation. They weren't there to see. So how are they there to report? This is hypothesis. This is a conjecture. The reality is Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. He is the one who created everything. So back to this verse. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ فَوْقَهُمْ صَافَّاتٍ وَيَقْبِضْنَ مَا يُمْسِكُنَّ إِلَّا الرَّحْمَنُ. It's only Ar-Rahman who holds them up. إِنَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ بَصِيرٌ. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ. Who is this army of yours? أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ, for your benefit, for your protection. يَنْصُرُكُمْ. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ يَنْصُرُكُمْ مِنْ دُونِ الرَّحْمَنِ, which can help you, assist you besides Ar-Rahman, the merciful one. Which army do you have? And the mushrikeen knew, even as the Qur'an was being revealed and they were rejecting it. And this is a Makki surah, and the message extends till the day of Qiyamah, but the context of revelation, they knew that they had their gods, large numbers of them, 360 in the Haram itself, but they knew Allah is Allah. And Allah mentions this, when you're at sea in a ship, and there's a storm and you fear being drowned, you forget your gods, and you only pray to Allah. You only pray to Allah, to the one. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ يَنْصُرُكُمْ مِنْ دُونِ الرَّحْمَنِ. Which army that you have that can save you and protect you and assist you besides Allah? أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ يَنْصُرُكُمْ مِنْ دُونِ الرَّحْمَنِ إِنِ الْكَافِرُونَ إِلَّا فِي غُرُورٍ. But the disbelievers are in deception. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرْزُقُكُمْ. Or who is this that can give you sustenance? يَرْزُقُكُمْ إِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقَهُ. If He, Allah, holds your risk and sustenance back. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرْزُقُكُمْ إِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقَهُ بَلْ لَجُّوا فِي عُتُوٍّ وَنُفُورٍ. But they are persistent, stubborn, lajju. They have become stubborn in their rebellion, utu wa nufur, and in their aversion, in their running away from the truth. So, if Allah Azza wa Jal chooses to restrict your rizq, then what can you do to expand it? Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who restricts the rizq for whomsoever He wills, and He expands it from whomsoever He wills. And the whole food chain is dependent ultimately on His decree, not on anything else. All the rest are the zawahir, the asbab that you can see. The reality is that He controls all of this. It's in His hand, it's in His grasp. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرْزُقُكُمْ مِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقَهُ بَلْ لَجُّوا فِي عُتُوٍّ وَنُفُورٍ أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ أَهْدَى. Is he the one who walks groveling on his face, ahda, more guided? أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِيًّا عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Or the one who walks upright on the straight path. This is a metaphor. A person who has his face groveling in the dust on the earth. He has his face on the ground. He keeps tripping and falling, and he has his face on the ground. When you walk, and this is the special status of the human being, we are the only one from all of the creatures on this earth that has this upright posture. Head above shoulders, straight up. And this head is not meant to bow before anyone besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, when you walk properly in the physical world, when people, elders will tell youngsters, young people, watch where you're walking. Your parents will tell you, watch where you're walking. Sometimes, if you're not focused on where you're going, then you might crash. If you're walking, and even worse, if you're riding a bike, and even worse, if you're driving a car, you're distracted momentarily, what does that lead to? So how can you get to your destination safely, securely, properly, if you're not looking where you're going? And how can you achieve that if you're not standing up straight? Your face is on the ground. أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. It's impossible to get to your destination. And so the same metaphor is being used here. A person who has essentially fallen in terms of guidance. He can't see where he's going, and he can't understand where he's going. He has no sense of understanding and direction, no knowledge, no hidayah, no nur. أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ أَهْدَى. Is he more rightly guided? أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِيًّا, or the one who's walking upright عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ, on a straight path. Which one is in a better situation? A straight path. A path is already smooth, and it takes you to your destination. When you have a road to follow, then you're not wandering hither, thither, you're not looking for direction from the inspiration of the stars to navigate yourself, or finding a compass or asking direction. You're already on the road. You've found direction on the road, and you're just following the people ahead of you, which in this instance is the Anbiya, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Siddiqeen, the Shuhada, the Salihin. أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِينَ عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. So after mentioning his signs and inviting us to look at the domain between the heavens and the earth. Remember, previous verses, Allah talked about the earth itself. Before this, Allah talked about the heavens and the stars. And so here, we're being told to look at the birds and the creatures that fly, and to recognize the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a consequence. أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِينَ عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ. Say, He is the one who created you, who brought you into existence. قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to them, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ. He is the one who created you. أَنْشَأَكُمْ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ. And He made for you your hearing, your ears, sam'a wal absara, your sight, wal afida, your hearts. Your ears and eyes and hearts were given to you by Him. قُلْ هُوَ Allah Azza wa Jal. And these are your sources of knowledge. They are your primary sources of knowledge. You're supposed to use your senses as a source of knowledge, and your hearts to reflect. قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ. Learn through your hearing, learn through your sight, and learn with your heart. أَنْشَأَكُمْ. So your ears should be receptive to the truth, your eyes should be receptive to learning the lessons of this world, and your hearts should be reflective of what comes in through the ears and eyes and through your senses. قُلْ هُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَكُمْ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ. Very little it is that you are grateful, that you show thanks. Now, you show very little thanks. Now, this is a complaint about us that Allah Azza wa Jal is making. In other words, an appropriate way to show gratitude of the ni'mas of your eyes and ears and hearts is that you use them to please Allah, and to search for His guidance, and to follow it, to fulfill the obligations we have towards Him, and to desist from His disobedience. And when we do neither, when we don't fulfill our obligations towards Him and we disobey Him, then we are not appreciating the ni'mah of our creation, ansha'akum, and our senses, as-sam'a wal-absara, and our hearts, our inner world. Wal-af'ida, fu'ad, is the heart. So Allah Azza wa Jal, there's various words for the heart. This is one of them, fu'ad. So Allah Ta'ala says, قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ. So the appropriate shukr in this dunya is to gain knowledge and ma'rifah of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, His tawheed, His sifat, and then subsequently to follow the path that He has instructed us to follow. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us tawfiq to understand. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على عبده ورسوله سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.